Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sick of This Shit Publications. I'm Nick Paro, not your dad, joined by my friend Lev Parnas for today's Intelligent Masculinity discussion. Sorry, y'all, we were a little bit late. We had some tech difficulties. We were getting Lev set back up. He's not on his normal computer, so he's lucky his tech guy is me, and I'm here hanging out with him. But we got it going. Hey, y'all, smash the heart as you come on in, wherever you're catching us, Substack, YouTube, Twitch. Welcome to Sick of This Shit Publications. We're going to have a great conversation today.
Absolutely.
Lev, I know pretty much everybody knows you, and knows who you are. But do you mind introducing yourself just a bit? So for anyone who might not know you or might not have seen you or might not have heard from you in a while, I know you're all over the place, but that doesn't mean everybody hears from you.
That's true.
Is introduce yourself for everybody, and then we're going to get into this great conversation today.
First of all, thanks for having me, Nick. And I'm sorry. I'm glad you're my technical guy. Otherwise, we would not be able to get this. But we're here, yeah. So one of the things that you need to know about me is I'm not a technical guy, old school guy. That's to start off with. But I was born in Ukraine in 1972. It was still the Soviet Union. We immigrated to the United States, where we planted and started living it. It was in Brooklyn, New York, after first coming to Detroit, Michigan, and then eventually coming to Brooklyn, New York, and settling in a place called Little Brighton Beach, which was called Little Odessa at the time, where all the immigrants that were coming out from the Soviet Union at the time were settling in. I grew up in that community. Grew up on the streets. My father passed away when I was 11 years old. I was raised by my mother, my grandmother, and my sister. That's why for me, women is a very important subject. And that's why one of the things that I fight for very hard. And some people even ask me, like, oh, what do you have to do with the survivors? It's like, what? It's not about what I have to do with the survivor. It's what we all have to do with the survivors. It's about how we treat our women. And we've gotten to an age and a time right now where it's a little bit odd to me. I grew up in a time where, if you're standing at a bus and there's a woman, if you're sitting down in the bus and you stand up and you give your seat to, if there's a woman there. And, nowadays it's not like that. Nowadays it's like, everybody looks at it as a weird way. So grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up on the streets, went to, dropped out of high school, went to work at different various jobs. One of my jobs was real estate. I was where my whole Trump family connection started by, I met his father, Fred, working for the Trump family through a real estate company, selling his co-op apartments. Later on, I did a lot of odds and ends. It's a long story, but basically, I've been involved, in the Soviet Union and Russia, the fall of Russia. I've known Vladimir Putin before he was, president of Russia, when he was still mayor of St. Petersburg, and had a very interesting childhood or life growing up, various things until I met Donald Trump. And then eventually, Donald Trump sent me to Ukraine and to get the dirt on the Bidens. And here we are.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good starting recap. And welcome everyone. Again, as you're still coming on in, Lev, it's really good to have you with us for this conversation. And I want to dig into both your past, but also really focus on the last decade or so, and how you've grown and what's changed for you in these last 10 years. Because I know before then you had a past. You have a past. You have a past, and you're not afraid to talk about it. And I'm glad you're not. It's wonderful that you do. And if things come up, I may push on some topics if there are any. You know me. And I just want to make sure too. Remember, in the chat today, everyone, I know you will be, but please be respectful throughout the chat. This entire conversation is about masculinity, about learning, about growth, and as we like to say, to just suck less. while we're here. And so this is a space where we can all learn. So if you have questions, please ask. I do look and watch the chat. We have some incredible mods in our chat today for the Sick of This Shit publications. And if you're not following either of us and you're here on Substack, please hit the subscribe in the top left before we get into this conversation. We're going to start out with some general stuff like we always do. And then I've got some questions for Lev that are our masculinity series itself, which ends with a set of 5 or 4 rapid fire questions that are based on the Mulan theme song, I'll Make a Man Out of You, the chorus lines from that. And those tend to be my favorite and also the hardest questions because you got to think on your feet for them a little bit and it's a little different.
I love it.
But you have a rich history of both good and bad. You've done some incredibly damaging things at points. I would say the Ukraine, the pressure campaigns in Ukraine that you did and the Biden stuff was really damaging. And you've spent the last decade really atoning for these things and coming out hard and truthful. And I've never seen you back down from it. What shifted? What really shifted for you now that you can look back on it, say a decade later? What really shifted for you that
Yeah.
got you on this different track?
Great question, Nick. And I get asked that question all the time by people, and I get a chance to, every time I get asked that question, really think about it. And then after I answer, I think about it some more because it's an evaluation. It was an I evolved into getting through that process. It wasn't like one thing where, it's like, you stop taking drugs one day and all of a sudden you woke up out of a coma or something and you're a different person. That wasn't the case because I was in a cult. And people that don't know what it's like being in a cult, it's when you lose your mind, when you believe in certain things, when you could look at like a table and it's black and really think it's white because your cult leader tells you that. And I know it's crazy to believe that, and I was one of those people that grew up watching cult movies, watching all of this stuff, and thinking to myself, there has to be something wrong with those people because how could you listen to John Jones? He tells you drink something and you're gonna drink and kill yourself, or how do you give your kids to some guy because he says, I'm the God or Lord, and until you experience it, you don't know it. And so a big part of it was getting out of the cult. And thank God that I had a strong family. Thank God I had a strong support system. And thank God I had a really good lawyer that was a friend of mine that I could trust. And it started by getting arrested. That shock of getting arrested and realizing that the people that you were around, that your family, the people that you trusted more than anything, and that you basically actually risked my life traveling around the world, were not who they say they were. And with me, it was a little bit different because they arrested me on their espionage charges. So I was in prison without even a phone call, without, they held me in such crazy conditions for the first 10 days that I got a real good wake-up call. And I think that really hurt them because I got a chance to really think and compare and understand to what was happening to me, to what was going on in the past 4 years while I was in that world and watched it happen to others and the way we would react. And I was part of that whole thing. And then, obviously things added on, like the postcard being sent under my door all of a sudden from the White House telling me, from Rudy Giuliani to, be quiet, more or less. The fact that I had to fire my lawyers because they came in and told me, shut up and just take your medicine. And, Todd Blanche was part of that crew at the time. Our attorney general was part of my legal team at the time. So, yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to cut in real quick before you go any further. When you got that note, and your lawyers did all of this wasn't something that just impacted you. This also is something that impacted your whole family. What was that like for you and your family, and did it change any dynamics at home? what did it change at home for you? Because I've never received something like that, so I cannot understand. I don't know from my own personal context of what it might be like. But what was that like for you and your family when that happened?
Well, the crazy part is my family didn't find out about it till later because I received it while I was still in confinement, and then I had my attorneys, an attorney that was not even my attorney at the time. He was just a temporary attorney, smuggle it out literally out of the prison, and then I had him handed over to my real attorney. And I'll tell you, first of all, the biggest thing that proved was because what was going on was another campaign simultaneously while I was for 10 days, nobody could speak to me. Rudy Giuliani and Victoria Toensing, Joe DiGeneva, these people that are running our country right now were my lawyers and my friends, and they were calling my wife because my wife had nowhere else to call, and they would be telling her, like, we're worried about Lev. Lev might be saying some crazy things when he comes out. You have to be careful. 10 days in solitary confinement could do a lot of things to a man's mind. Like, they try to start preparing my wife, my sister, and everybody around me that I was going to go a little Looney Tunes. That if I start saying I received a note in the middle of the night, can you just think about this? Like, think about if I would be having all of a sudden I turn around, I say, "Oh, I got this slipped under my door," and everybody's like, "Uh-huh," and where is it? You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. The White House sent you. Yeah, left. Okay, tell us another story. So, I mean, it was like little things like that in my life that, thank God, like, the fact that I was able to smuggle the note out, the fact that my wife was somehow able to copy my iCloud over to her stuff that I could till this day be able to bring. Because without that, Nick, I mean, I'd be probably in prisons now. They'd make me into some crazy guy. I would have lost my family. Nobody would have believed the word I said, and it would have been, you know how you told me,
Hmm.
I would end up losing everything. So that note, I think, was a big validation, but also it showed who they really were, and it was tough on my family. But the note was just one part of it. I think the 4 years of Trump world was what I put my family through while I was under the cult of Trump was really, I think, I mean, those little things were like already, straws that break the camel's back, like the note, the arrest, finding out like little things here and there. But, the overall, relationship, I mean, leaving my wife at home for months at a time, her not knowing where I am, to raising the kids, I mean, it was a crazy environment.
So this is for it. It basically told him to shut up and stay silent. Do you remember the exact like wording of the
I
note?
had, yeah, I could read the note
Yeah,
again.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we hear these types of things verbatim.
Give me a second. Just,
And while Lev's looking that up, thank you everyone for continuing to smash that heart while you're here on Substack. Thank you for all the support for this discussion, for what we're talking about for each other in the chat. Thank you for making this a space that we can all come together and learn from. And if you're interested, while Lev's doing that, if you're interested in any Intelligent Masculinity merch from the Sick of This shop, over Lev's head is a little QR code. We have our anything but yes means no line started. And that's really, for me, that's one of the big things. So, Lev, are you ready on your side?
2 more seconds. I got so many. It's
No, you've probably got like pages,
yeah,
and you could.
yeah.
I don't think you could rival the Epstein files and the amount of pages you
No, thank
have.
God. No, I don't want to be even.
But that would be, if you did, that would be good to get it all out there, because then everything
Well,
bad needs to come to light.
what, that was the whole point, and that's why a lot of it. And right now, one of the things that we are putting together is I'm going to put together to be able to get out everything that I didn't get out. Like, I still have videos, and I still have. Oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah, and I'm sure you and I will talk about that, because as your tech support person too,
Yes,
we're going to be getting those out
we're
and
actually
trying to make sure we spread all the
archive.
word.
Yeah, we need to archive that. I have so much stuff in my archives that we need to take out. And me and you spoke about. Okay. Oh, here it goes. Here it goes. All right. So it was the note, first of all, it came from Rudy G. It was a postcard, not a note. It was a postcard from Rudy Giuliani, White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C., 2050. I mean, it's a stamp, the whole shebang. And this is the interesting part. It says to Lev Parnas or Igor Fruman at Alexandria, Virginia. Now, anybody that has ever had anybody that served time in prison or jail, you cannot just give information. You have to have their, file number. You have to have, and then every letter gets opened, approved, and then there's a mail time. I already learned this very well. You don't get mail slipped under your door at 3 o'clock in the morning. It just doesn't happen. So this postcard said, "Dear Lev, the lunch was good because just so you give you a preamp, when I got arrested, Rudy was supposed to be on the flight with me to Vienna when we were going. He canceled the last second while we were having lunch at the Trump Hotel. So we were having lunch, and from there we went on to the airport. And all in the meanwhile, the FBI was actually serving us lunch. One of the waiters was an FBI agent. So they could have arrested me anytime, but they needed the story. They needed to pretend that I was running away somewhere, that I was trying to flee, so they could try to shut me up, give me the strictest bail conditions. Because till this day, nobody's ever proven or put on any fact that I was leaving or trying to flee. It is a fact now that I was going on behalf of Trump to get stuff from him, and Giuliani. Fox News was supposed to be with me. So just understand how corrupt some of our, even under the Biden administration, Trump administration, the DOJ, just like we talk about, and I'm sorry I'm ranting a little bit, but just like we talk about, we need an overhaul when it comes to the ICE. We need an overhaul when it comes to the DOJ, our prison systems. It is so corrupt, so disgusting. I mean, we're supposed to live in a country where it's for the free. Our prison systems are turning our country into what we are because there's no rehabilitation. It's making people into animals and hurting not just them, but their families, their kids, and it becomes generational. That's why, and it's all about the dollars and cents. And we're seeing it play out now with ICE, same thing with the private facilities, same thing with prison. But anyway, so that's where I met with Giuliani, and that's what last time I seen him. So he writes to me, the lunch was good, and I enjoyed sharing a table with you. Trump Hotel is nice, don't you think? I'm sorry what happened at Dulles Airport, and I guess we won't be meeting in Vienna after all. Don't worry, Paul's attorneys are very good. He only got 8 to 10 years, so maybe things will work out. Rudy G. Because at that time, my attorneys were Paul Manafort's attorneys and Trump's attorneys, and he was trying to say to me, "Look, Paul was supposed to get 30 years to life. We were thinking about. He only got 8 to 10. Don't worry, if you're going to be okay. Meaning, like, keep quiet, type of stuff." So that was sent, like, literally slipped under my door at like 3 o'clock in the morning. After so that was one of the things that transpired.
That's well, thank you for talking about that. Thank you for so what now that you look back on that, would you have done anything different? Now that you look back on the what's happened since then, these past 10 years that you are fighting and doing everything that you're doing, you have been in the spotlight in different areas and under a microscope. Sorry, a microscope in a lot of areas of your life. You still are under that microscope. Um, what do you do to keep reminding yourself that you're doing the right thing now? What do you do? How do you continue on this path for yourself? Because I know it's probably really tough at times.
The crazy part is a lot of people, and that's why I'm so grateful to Rachel Maddow and Billy Corbin that did my documentary, because that documentary could have been done in a lot of different ways from a lot of different perspectives. And they chose to do it from my point of view, and not my point of view, but from a perspective of what I was involved with, and in that they also played out my life a little bit. And if you get to understand and know me a little bit, before I joined the cult of Trump, I was a different person. Yes, I was, maybe I wasn't your altar boy. I wasn't a saint when it came to business deals, but when it came to certain subjects, like when it came to protecting women, or when it came to protecting the disabled, or standing up to bullies, or that's who I was. That's who I grew up to be. That's like, I was not a hardcore mega right wing, white nationalist. I was an immigrant. I'm Jewish. I was an immigrant that came here that wanted the same rights. So I did not grow up, and politics to me was the farthest thing from, so I had no idea. So do I regret and would do things differently? Absolutely. First of all, I would never get involved in politics. I would stay as far away from politics as I could. But it's hard to say do things differently when you're in a cult. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, say, would you do different? Like, if you were a drug addict and you committed crime while you were a drug addict, would you do? Of course, I would. I would not do drugs, so I wouldn't commit the crime. So, if I wasn't, if part of the cult, and if I wasn't so that deep, I wouldn't have done 90% of the things I would have realized that, that's not good, or I'm not going to hang out around this guy. Or instead, you start making excuses for you in your head for the person. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. I remember Trump. This was like a real kind of a breaking where I like really went hard towards, into the cult, where I remember in the beginning, Donald Trump made fun of this reporter that had, I don't know if it epilepsy, or a reporter that had some sort of a problem,
Yeah,
a health
the
problem.
I remember it, that
You
iconic image
remember
with
the
his hands
iconic,
on his chest,
and
making
where he
disgusting.
disgusting, right? He gets up there and he makes fun of that reporter, like, And I remember sitting at the Trump Hotel, like, very vehemently that moment, and I was like, "What the like what is going on here? Like, what are you doing?" And then everybody around you are like starts laughing and starts like, yeah, like, talking about like how dare he go after Trump, like if he has his own problems he should do. And you see the shift, and you see your own mind. I remember, I'll never forget that started convincing me, because I remember going home, and speaking to my wife that day, even about, like, like, she'll be like, did you see that? And I was like, instead of agreeing with her, I was looking at ways of how to excuse it for him. You know what I'm saying to you?
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I never forgot, because even though I moved forward, but it was like something that I remembered. It was like, like, that was like I crossed that line where I shouldn't have crossed. Like, I could have maybe stopped at that point. But the power, the money, the power of being so close to the president of the United States, it just took over.
Yeah. Well, you hit on a really interesting point there, around the accountability aspect. And I want to dive into that in terms of the masculinity side and the humaning side, because this is a better humaning project. And I know for those in the audience, I've had a really couple really good questions on it. And is, yes, we're going to be shifting the title of the show a little bit away from intelligent masculinity and probably towards a better humaning project or something similar, because we've had some amazing guests across the spectrum. And I've learned from all of them that there's a really similar trait that we all seem to have on, what it means to be a good person. And in this case, around intelligent masculinity, is I'm going to give you my definition on it, Levin. It hits on a lot of what you said, and I'd love to hear your thoughts after hearing this definition of what the lack of that looked like in the MAGA sphere, or the sphere that you were in, the cult that you were in, and what is different about masculinity, or your approach to being a human since you've left. And so over these over these 6 months of doing this series, I've come to a pretty solid definition of intelligent masculinity, or intelligent humaning, which is, it's the refusal to outsource accountability onto others, and the discipline to live with the consequences of your actions and values. And what you were describing in there, especially around the reporter, and I know that was for you, it sounds like that was a really almost a light bulb moment, in yourself is looking back, how do you see the lack of accountability back then, and also nowadays the increased efforts in that lack of accountability? And what is that? What does it mean to you to hold yourself accountable and hold yourself with the consequences of your actions?
Oof, there's a lot to unwind there.
I know, easy question.
Yeah, let me try to say this. First of all, I think we all, need to learn a lesson, not me from that type of experience, because think about how we, went from a country of where, we were progressing to support independent rights. We were progressing to support female rights. We were progressing to support all of this progression, and then all of a sudden one day it all stopped. It all just like, and then when you're saying, looking back at watching what he did to that reporter to me was kind of me at a young age, because coming here as an immigrant, especially from the Soviet Union back in 1976. Back then it was the Cold War. A lot of people don't even remember how we were looked at. I mean, kids in school would touch me, think I was a Martian, I was an alien, because they couldn't understand, because we wouldn't travel. You wouldn't travel as freely as you're traveling now, back then in the 80s and 90s. So, the reason that hit hard to me was because it's against everything I stood for. It was, I stood for, anti-bullyism, and here we are, learning to accept it and say it's okay. And I think the lack of accountability, not only that I took, obviously, but I think that we as a country took at that time, while he was pushing and doing these things, is why we got to where we got to today, where we're looking at now. Not only is it just where he's making fun of a journalist, but where now he's taking it to the next level, where he's abusing women journalists every single day, to an extent, and it's becoming, in which I can't even understand how it's becoming normalized, where it's not the biggest story, where there's nobody sticking up, where there's nobody responding. So when you say accountability, we don't have any accountability till this day. Nobody's taking accountability, for his actions. I mean, people still make excuses for it. People still try to look the other way, and that's why we're progressing it so hard and hard when it comes to this. What's that? That gender misogynistic attitude, where our young generation is like looking at women going back to like 1920s and 30s and 40s, like, you gotta just stay in the house and cook and do, the Andrew Tates of the world and stuff like that. And you take a look at it, and their voices are overlapping the regular voices. You know what I'm saying to you? So I think we have a big problem when it comes to what Donald Trump did, and I think that the show that you're running, I think, is extremely important. I think that, because I think we need to take a step back and say, wait a second, like, what is really going on? I mean, we all have mothers, we all have wives, we all have sisters or daughters, or, and I think that gets lost when a lot of these young kids start watching like an Andrew Tate. When they see the Bugatti, when they see the private plane, when they see it, they don't see what the cost that comes with it. You know what I'm saying to you? And I think
Mhm.
that is a drug right now of its own. So I don't think we've taken accountability I've taken accountability personally, and that's why I fight my fight every day. That's why I fight so hard for the survivors. That's why I fight so hard for the truth. That's why, a lot of people, even, my son even said to me, he said, Dad, just maybe stop being so controversial. And I'm like, it's not about controversy. I said, I love you, but it's not about being controversial. I can't deal with the bullshit. I grew up where, I spoke up when that's why we came to America. You have a voice. And then when they taught you for 4 years, you're thinking that you're fighting the deep state, that you're going to speak truth to power, that you're going to get, because that's what I thought I was doing. I thought I was out working this great mission for our country to uncover, and I was going to get the Medal of Freedom. I was
Mhm.
thinking this is it. And when you realize that it's all corrupt and it's all, was a game, and it was all more manipulated for their own personal needs, you could start, then seeing how it all leads up to exactly what we're seeing down the line, and how they're taking rights away from not only women, but also minorities, and even us Americans, it's citizens, by what ICE is doing. So I don't think we've had, I don't know if I answered that question because of how the
No, I
question
think you
goes.
answered it really well, because it actually leads into the next mm, one of the biggest areas that you're doing now, and the next somewhat topic, but it's still on all of this masculinity stuff and better humaning and just taking accountability. Is you, over the last months, have been one of the most vocal advocates for the survivors of the Epstein trafficking and abuse network and corruption network that is going on. And you said you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for them and all of us, and we should all be doing it. Why? Why do you believe that? Why? I believe it. I believe it too. I'm on that same thought path. Is the most incredible, heroic, and courageous people right now are the survivors of the Epstein and that entire abuse network. Why do you do what you're doing? Why do you feel that it's something that you need to be doing right now?
Well, I'll tell you a little story that I didn't share. A lot of people might not know that, but if you watch my documentary, read my book, know my story a little bit, and see where I grew up and the time I grew up and around the people I grew up, a lot of these people, I was a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid that grew up looking up to women very strongly, because my idol was my mother, my grandmother, my sister at the time. My father passed away when I was 11. So everything that, all the strength and everything I've learned, I've never had a male figure in my life. My male figures in my life were literally later on, some of the most powerful men in the world that, I looked up to them. And I think maybe that was some of where, my own thing was, I was always looking maybe for that father figure, and those powerful men that, and could have been something that I had to deal with when I was younger that I never dealt with, but neither here nor there. So that was, something extremely important to me growing up. I couldn't even watch movies where women would get, raped or when beaten. To me, like, even I remember sometimes even till this day, like, we could watch a movie with my wife, and if there's something, I get very like, she's like, it's just a movie, calm down, honey. Like, it's because I grew up in a world where I've seen a lot of harm for women, young girls. At that time, I couldn't understand what trafficking was. I couldn't understand what was taking place. I couldn't even fathom to realize that then, what I'm starting at, now, to understand what was going on. When you look back and, you see those young girls, like, coming over here in different ways, and you're seeing, so, remembering some of the stories you would hear, and you would think that, you wouldn't believe most of the, you would be pushed to believe, taught that it's normality. Like, there's just, certain people that, are able to eat caviar, certain people that can't eat caviar, certain people that are meant to drive a Rolls Royce, certain people are meant. It's just like you get programmed into understanding that, and a lot of it I had to deal with, where you block a lot of things to get through those times in life, because otherwise you can't survive. I was, in so many different situations in my life where the wrong move, the wrong second, I wouldn't be here. I'd be either dead, jail, or something else. I've seen a lot of death in front of my eyes, people dying, people getting shot, driving, uh, during the 90s and the Soviet Union. I mean, watching apartment buildings getting blown up. I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. But one of the things that I remember a lot is, having to do with all of these young girls. I remember Miami, New York. I remember during the 90s, it was this thing that, these modeling agencies and I remember being from around it, but I wasn't, because of my age and because I wasn't part of any clique. I wasn't, but I was that kid that was trying to get on. So I could see it, but so now when it started coming out, the Epstein files, I'll never forget July 6th of last year when Pam Bondi came out with that note, and she said that we're going to close it up. Me and my wife were sitting there, and I said, she's lying. They're covering it up. And I'll never forget having that conversation. I think I called Wajahid Ali. I don't remember. I think I called Waj, and I said to him, I said, we were not even good friends or nothing. We sometimes are different sides of the field on certain things. And I said, look, Waj, I got some breaking news. Like, this is stuff that's happening in the Epstein files and ever since then, it just became one thing. Watching the cover up and being so close to the people and breaking the news and watching how they're trying to cover it up, it's been opening up a lot of memories for myself. And it's been opening up a lot of watching and thinking about that could have been my daughter. That could have been, and now I have a 19-year-old daughter, and I speak to her every day. And when she comes to me, and the Epstein files are a very, very something that's very public, and she talks to me about, I look at her and I see all the survivors all the time. It's a very painful thing because deep down inside, I think, could I have helped somebody back then? Was I, could I have said something, or if I seen something? I try to keep thinking back because it was a time in the era where it was a totally different world. Women were treated totally differently, looked at differently, power is different. And now watching it all, evolve, it makes me, gives me that power to want to do the right thing.
And so, thinking on that, is what are you doing now to expand the reach that you are doing? Because you've spent the last year really dedicated to this in a lot of ways. And you're, like I said, you're one of the most consistent voices out there for the survivors. And there are many people who are doing some incredible work for the survivors, and you're on that list of consistent voices. What are you continuing to do? And I know you talked a little bit about it on Monday on your show, is what are you continuing to do now to to bring justice and accountability for the survivors, but also to show those around you an example of what it means to be a good person, a good man? How are you using this for yourself as a way to grow, I guess, is my real question. And what are you continuing to do?
Great question. First of all, sir, I'm sorry, that's my little doggy in the background.
We get dog bells going off all the time.
Yeah. First of all, I'll give you a 30,000. I can't go deep into because we have something very important planned. Hopefully, by the end of this month, we'll be able to make an announcement. But I'm working very close with a whole group of survivors, Lisa Phillips being one of them. And I think I found a way where we could be able to have a little accountability. We've been working with the survivors in the background, with lawyers and attorneys, and where I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give.
Don't reveal anything.
I don't want to reveal anything for them to be able to deal with it. But I think if we're able to pull this off, I think it's going to be. We're going to really start seeing accountability finally. That they've been hiding, and not just from the Epstein files, but also from a lot of these powerful men that are not even named, that we don't hear about, because we hear about just these the big names. We hear Donald Trump, Epstein. We hear Lutnick, but there's so many of these men that don't make that top grade that are there, that are just there's so many also enablers and this is one of the things that I think that is a big key that I'm going after is not just them, but the enablers. Because people one of the things I realized in looking back at a lot of things that transpired in my life, and I look back at a lot of the certain things, and it was the enablers that allowed certain criminals to get away with what they were doing. And that's why I always talk about Donald Trump. Yeah, Donald Trump, he's as bad as they come, but wouldn't be able to get away and do the things he would be doing if he didn't have the enablers to allow him to do it. And that is, I think, which is a big thing when it comes to the Epstein files. It's we concentrate on the actual Epstein. Yeah, we concentrate on Trump, but it was a group of enablers that allowed them to continue hiding it, protecting it, and I think they're just as, if not worse, capable because, of the same crimes that are taking place.
Good. I'm glad to hear that you're continuing this fight, and I knew you were. I just wanted to make sure that people also know, like, it's not just the top names, and I think everyone here knows it, that it's not just those top names, it's all of them, and it's everyone around that is making it possible. What do you see that? And I know we're right at the top of our hour, so I don't want to keep you too
Before we
long. I
just
know.
no,
Yeah.
I'm with you because we started late. So if we have to go a little longer, I'm with you, Nick. But I also want to touch on, just before we go to the next thing, is one of the things that really touched the survivors right now, and it was a story that we actually are expanding. And if your viewers and all the viewers out there could help us expand the story, I think it's extremely important. So Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan broke a story. Well, they didn't break a story. They wrote a story. They said it was a breaking story about a week ago about talking about how they have tapes and how they have conversation about how there was J.D. Vance and Susie Wiles and Pam Bondi. They were going to use the Insurrection Act. They were trying to cover up the Epstein files. The problem with this is it's not that the story came out 8 months later, because we understand journalists sometimes, New York Times, they make you go through rigorous before you could actually print the story because it's the names involved. The problem is that they held back a lot of this information, not to write the story of breaking news as journalists that they should, but to put a book out. They're putting a book out, and that is disgusting. And when the survivors reached out to me and they said to me, I can't believe this has happened. I couldn't understand myself. So for the past several days, and every day we're going to be doing, the survivors put out a statement. I could send it to you also, but it is we have laws that we in this country that if you kill somebody, you can't go profit and write a book about it. You can't make money off your own crimes. How are journalists allowed to profit off making money off the survivors? How of the crimes? Now, again, and I want to make it clear that we're talking about not book writers. We're not talking about professions where you might not like the person, but that's what they do. That's what they do for jobs. These are people that work for the New York Times. These are people that break stories. So you're telling me that they had a story that could have impacted the survivors, the critical timing when all of this, and you held it for 8 months to write a book. So, and we have to understand, Maggie Haberman is not a man. She's also a female. So, we're living in a world right now where I'm also watching a lot of women attack men that are trying to protect women. And that's the crazy part. And I've had it done to myself recently.
Mhm.
I've been attacked by certain groups out here, and for no reason, because till this day, I don't even know what I did. I don't know these people. If anything, I protect women's rights. There's a feminist group out there that all of a sudden started writing hit pieces on me, started saying, that I'm a bad guy, that I work for Trump, that I'm trying to hurt, the women. And I couldn't understand. So sometimes I say it's like women are harder on women than even men are sometimes. And it's crazy, especially when it comes to the Epstein files. I'll get messages like how could anybody be upset that I'm calling out Maggie Haberman for writing a book about the Epstein survivors, where you have an Epstein. But there are people out there in the chat that will come out there and say, "Hey, Lev, why are you trying to cause division? Why are you attacking Maggie Haberman? They're good. They're good journalists." And that's why I tell people, I said, look, I'm not here to win a competition or get some kind of trophy for being the most liked person on Substack. I don't care if anybody likes me. I just want to get some, things accomplished. At the end, history will judge all of us. And I'm not looking how I'm being judged now. I'll wait till how history judges me when everything is over and everybody takes a look and says, you know what? Because Nick, you know better than anybody. You do my stuff behind the scenes. If anybody would take a look for the past year, what I did on Substack, and if they would go back and read every story that I broke and when the media broke it or when it happened and everything, they would get a different point of view. And but unfortunately, you can't teach everybody and tell back the story. People like to take headlines and.
Oh, my daughter was asking for my
Oh,
charger.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm looking back at what you've done, especially over this past year of just nonstop work and the continued efforts that you're doing. It's you are living through the definition that I put out earlier of holding yourself accountable and living with the consequences of your actions. And be those good consequences or bad consequences, there have been consequences for your action. You've gotten hate, you've gotten love, you've gotten anywhere in between. And I think the actions that you're doing are speaking louder than any of the words you could have been saying. And the actions that you continue to do are speaking really loudly for the survivors and for those who are current victims and those we've never heard about. And
So many.
it's and that number keeps growing. And like I said, they're the bravest people out there. We're just trying to stand shoulder to shoulder with them and amplify what they're saying so they get the accountability and justice they deserve. And I'm glad you're out here doing that.
Thank you.
And I think that's a really good point to shift us to our final set of questions and get a little bit relaxed and whimsical and end our show because we've had a bit of heavy subject, and which I expected because you've had a life. You've lived a life. You've lived a really full life so far, and you've lived a life that has gone from mobster and in jail to 10 years of nonstop work, to write many of the things that in that cult window you helped cause happen. And I think it's important that we talk about those and continue to discuss
Absolutely.
it. And you're not done yet.
No, and I tell, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No,
I tell
go.
I tell everybody out there to ask the hard questions, put people's feet to the fire, including myself. I tell everybody, I say, don't, when somebody says, "Oh, I don't want to," no, ask the hard questions. I tell, there's no such thing as a bad, stupid question. There's no such thing as a bad question. Information is key. So I tell people, I said, just like you put everybody, just because a guy's name is, and again, I'm not using him for any example. I'm just throwing a name out there. Just because he's Jim Acosta doesn't mean that that's it. You know what I'm saying to you? Is still put him to the test. They still make sure that he's reporting the right news. Make sure, because we sometimes get complacent and we forget what we're actually trying to do. We forget the mission and we start liking somebody and we start this, and we forget the mission. And the mission is right now to save our democracy. The mission is to be able to get us back to where we're progressing as a country and not regressing as a country and going back 100 years. So I think the biggest takeaway that we should all take is to be able to figure out how we unite and not divide, because we're so quickly divided, and that is why people like Trump and these cults, they use that emotional attacks on us to be able to put that rage bait text out there. Lev said something about a woman. true or not true, boom, all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, Nick said something about, LGBTQ rights. Oh, let's attack Nick, or what I'm saying to you. And instead of us concentrating, this is what is going to play out more and more. I warn everybody here, especially on Substack, because the past year, this has become such a platform for people that have found a way to get information away from all the garbage, but it's also become an echo chamber. It's also become a place where people have come in there and are trying to disrupt us. So, I think we need to be vigilant. We need to be, united, and we need not to forget the main cause. And the main objective is together right now is to be able to win for humanity, because that's the number one thing.
Yeah. And I love that you're focused on that. And thank you for coming on. Again, thanks for being with me today, Lev. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And thank you for the work that you're doing and helping inspire me to continue to do more work on these topics, to inspire others to do more work on this area, and to help themselves in different ways. You have some amazing kids that you have raised. We didn't even get to talk about like the influence that you've had to, and the family dynamics of what it might have been like for your sons, your daughter, and how everything has come back. And I'd love to have another follow on with
Absolutely.
you so that we
Yeah.
can dig further into it, because I think you have an incredible story that needs to be told too, about what it means to be a father and how your relationship with your kids have inspired or changed or affected you. And we haven't gotten there, so we're going to do this again. So everyone,
Definitely.
thank you all for being here with us on this, because it's great to have you. It's also really good to hear from Lev and get his story and learn more about him. And we're going to end, like I said, on a little bit of a whimsical note. I've got 4 questions for you here, Lev. These are the off the cuff. There's no wrong answer to these questions, whatever your answer may be. We've had a couple I don't know answers. These are fun. They're also a little bit challenging, unexpectedly. But these are your lightning round questions, and they are based on the Mulan's "I'll Make a Man Out of You" theme song. It's the clarion call for action or it was for men. It's like the "Let's Go Girls" for boys to pump themselves up a little bit. It gives you some extra energy and juice. And so here we go, Lev. 4 quick questions for you. To you, what does it mean to be as swift as a coursing river?
Whoa. Swift as a coursing river. It means it gives me the ability to keep flowing and keep doing what I'm doing, with it, even though sometimes there could be things in the middle like rocks or wood that fall, but the river keeps flowing and nothing could stop it. Just the pressure of my team, which is each and every one of you of my subscribers. We're all that river that's pushing through to get to the truth.
Love it. Love it. How do you embody the force of a great typhoon?
Oof. How do I embody? It's difficult, because a typhoon is a powerful energy of weather that brings a lot of disaster, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, but also a lot of incredible, fascinating scientific knowledge of how it transforms and how it becomes. And I think that combination is basically what my life is all about, is a typhoon. And I try to keep the bad out, keep the good in, but it keeps spinning, and life is like waking up to a typhoon nowadays.
Yeah, if we didn't wake up to the news every day being ridiculous, we wouldn't be where we are right now. I love that answer. This one is next question, very similar but slightly different. Is how are you as strong as a raging fire?
Oof. Well, a raging fire is strong because of the conditions around it. If you feed it the right conditions, the fire becomes raging. Expands. With wind, with accelerates. And I look at this whole situation that we're living in our country right now like a raging fire, and that we're waking up and the country's burning, the world's burning, and that I feel that same passion inside simultaneously of trying to put out that fire. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does.
the rage and the fight kind of keeps you going to try to stop it.
Wonderful. And my final, well, second to last question of the night or of the day, but the final of these questions, and this one may be really hard for you because you are pretty public. But how are you as mysterious as the dark side of the moon?
Mysterious. I think I used to be very mysterious. um, I think my most mysterious side but that's starting to peak and people are starting to see is that I am truly, a mama's boy. That I love my wife, my kids. That when you look at the movies, when you read my book and you see what I've been around and all of that, I think the thing that, you know, always kept me grounded and what people don't know about me and the mysterious part is like, yes, I wanted all of that, but like growing up, I always wanted to have kids. I always wanted to have that perfect family. I wanted to, because I grew up without a father. I wanted to, and something that you touched on that we will talk about when it comes to kids at different time is I was blessed with having so many kids and so many different eras and times that it's a good and a bad thing because I live with a lot of pain knowing that certain of my older kids I wasn't there for them or was not being able to be that father that I can be now. But with that, I also say it's a learning curve because we're not born with a booklet of how to be a father or how to be a person or how to be a mother. It's part of generational, it's part of learning, it's part of evolving, and it's part of society. And I think that's the biggest thing right now that's would be mysterious about me is people don't really know. They look at the hard stuff but they don't know that I'm really a mama's boy.
I love that. I love that so much, and I'm excited to talk about that next time we talk, because you have a huge family, and you are now able to be the father you weren't or wanted to be. And I want to hear that story, and I want to hear especially about the difference between Daniel and Aaron and how how you have your relationships with them and not their professional relationships but your family and how you see them and the pride and fears that you have as a father. I'm looking forward to that conversation because
I'll
I've
just
got
give
kids of my
everybody
own.
I'll give everybody a little teaser for the next show. So just so you understand, I grew up, and it's crazy. I grew up looking at the way life should be with watching The Godfather and the Brady Bunch. And my and that's what that was what I looked at life. That was my understanding, and that's kind of the Brady Bunch is what saved me. It was what grounded me, what allowed me to see the different side, the humanity side of it. But the Godfather side was a way I put a lot of pressure on my kids, like Aaron, Daniel, Milana, my older kids, because I did not grow up and say like, "Hey, my dad did this." I had to look back and when I had to deal with my kids and say, "Okay, well, what would Michael Corleone do, or what would the Brady Bunch? What would happen there?" And try to off of what I grew up watching on TV because the streets were just too rough, and that's something I blocked out. I never wanted for my kids. Like I never wanted my kids to be that. That's why I wanted my kids to go to school. I wanted the Brady Bunch. That's what I
Mhm.
dreamed of. But I was living through The Godfather, so I don't know. It was crazy, but something we'll
I love
talk
that.
about.
I think that's a great juxtaposition and a cool and a great lead in for our next conversation that we're going to have here soon. Finally, Lev, how can people support you? How can they find and support the work that you're doing?
Here on Substack, folks, this is our home. This is where we've made our base. You can get me at Lev Remembers at on Substack. This is where I write. This is where I talk. This is where I bring you all the information. But we are expanding. We need to get the message out. We need to get more. So thanks to Nick's help, I'm now on YouTube. I'm on different platforms. But for all of you, you guys will always get all my stuff here on Substack. But we'll be streaming all over the place. And for those that can, please, I am also running for Congress as an independent to be able to run for the voices of the people that are basically feel their voices are left out, and the 22nd district here in Florida. And you could go to vote for Lev at .org. I'm sorry, vote for Lev at Congress.org. Vote for Lev at Congress.org. I'm not good at this myself. And
we'll make sure you get that URL for you. If you can send it to me, I'll add it. I can add it in as a part of the post show notes.
I'll have Daniel do it. My son just finished with the website, so we're getting awesome. There, folks. We're getting there. We're gonna be there.
Wonderful. I love it. So everyone, thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for joining us for today's Intelligent Masculinity discussion. I'm Nick Paro, not your dad, joined by Lev Parnas for Intelligent Masculinity. It's a better humaning project here on Sick of This Shit Publications. And as we like to say before the end of the day for everyone, we're done being sick of this shit here. So we're doing this shit. Have a great day, y'all. You'll see me here soon again for the Diogenes Club if you're watching live. So stick around, everyone. You're going to get a lot of Nick today. And have a great day, y'all. Lev, I'll talk to you again here soon.
Nick, thank you so much. And remember, the strongest man has a strong woman behind him. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks, everyone.